Hey guys, what's up? E3 2015 is officially over and it is time for me to make a video in which I kind of review my highlights and all the things that happened and share my opinion on these. It's impossible to highlight everything and talk about each single game that was announced because otherwise I would still be here in a week from now. But I'm going to point out just the games that really stood out to me and that I find really exciting. Before I get into that, I just want to say thanks to everyone who has subscribed to my channel. We have reached 500 subs and that's really amazing, and we kind of grow at quite a steady rate at the moment. So that's quite cool. I really appreciate that, but I want to keep that going. So guys, if you have any friends or if you really want to support the channel, then share this channel with your friends and just get everyone on board so we can all have like really productive discussions, because I feel most of my subscribers are really productive and they're really good guys and they want to add to the discussion under most of my videos. So that's really great, but let's keep it going. So let's get right into the games. Now, I already talked about the Bethesda Conference when we were just in the middle of the conferences, and it's still my favorite conference because they put so much emphasis on, user-generated content, and they showed Doom, which looked absolutely fantastic to me personally. I'll link the video about that conference down in the description so you can watch that separate. I don't want to repeat everything that I've said already. Shenmue 3 was announced, and we had these rumors, I made a video about it as well, where people thought, oh yeah, it might be coming, but most people just thought it's a fake, right? Why would there be Shenmue 3 14 years after the second game came out? Wouldn't make any sense, but now it's actually real and people freaked out completely. Generally, it was like a E3 of loads of unexpected surprises where like the dreams of a lot of gamers actually became real. Another example is The Last Guardian, right? They showed the gameplay, they announced it for 2016, and it looked absolutely awesome. They said kind of hand in hand with that the PS3 was too weak to handle the graphics, and that's why they waited until they actually have something to show on PS4, which I guess is a good argument. The only thing I want to say about this is that in the trailer that they showed, like the gameplay, this tiny kid just said the name of this massive, whatever it is, bird dragon thing, like a million times. He was just like, and I was like, dude, yeah, you said the name a million times. I assume that there's some kind of button where you push and then he calls the animal, but that just was like majorly annoying for me. But I guess like I'm really complaining on a high level here. The game looked fantastic and I'm sure it's gonna be just great, considering how much time they took to develop it. We got a new Southpark game that was announced, which is awesome because I really enjoyed The Stick of Truth. It was a great game. It was very, very funny. And I can't wait what they do with this one. I think instead of like previously, it was all like about kind of the Lord of the Rings themed. And now they want to do more kind of a superhero theme, which is quite cool, with the Coon and all these kind of South Park episodes. They're going to bring that to life. So that's cool. I can't wait for that. They showed a little bit more of Deus Ex, Mankind Divided. The world looks amazing. It just looked pretty much fantastic. But anyway, before I get into too much detail, I think I'm just going to go through the different conferences and highlight my thoughts on each single one. So we start off with EA, just jumping Bethesda, like I said, because I already talked about that. EA, I mean, did EA show anything except Hoopgard on stage? Like scanning his face and stuff. That was the only thing that stuck to my mind, and it was just a majorly awkward situation. I have no idea who this guy is or what he wanted on stage or how he contributed to anything, but hey, that was just weird. No, I mean, they did show a bit of stuff. Like they obviously had to show Star Wars Battlefront gameplay, and they did, as everyone expected. It looked fun, it looked alright, but to be honest, it was pretty much what I expected. It's some kind of Battlefield Frostbite spectacle with a suit of Star Wars on top of it, and that's pretty much, from my opinion, what it is. And then there were like a few gaps in it, like why is there Jedi Luke on Hoth, right? Like just in the storyline, it doesn't really make sense. I guess they just wanted to score with these characters, like, oh look, it's Darth Vader, and oh look, there's Jedi Luke, and now they are facing off with lightsabers and stuff. But it was, to me personally, as cool as it looked. And I mean, it was cool that you can go into like the snow speeders and the big AT-AT, and even they're kind of running on rails. It still looked all cool. Like it looked pretty nicely fleshed out what they had to show. But at the same time, I don't know what I was expecting. I was hoping to get a little bit more, something that I didn't expect from the start off. It was a little bit, I'm not particularly keen on the game. I guess if you look at games like No Man's Sky, for instance, where you seamlessly land on a planet and then go back up into space, and the galaxy is just so incredibly rich and big that it's just crazy. I think something like this I would have loved to see, that they really bring the Star Wars universe to life and not just say, look, basically it's a Battlefield 4, but everything looks like the Star Wars universe, and that's basically what it is. I know, Battlefront is about being a shooter and stuff, but I would have just really hoped that they elevate it into something that I wouldn't have expected. So I'm not really happy with where it's at, and I don't think I'm gonna buy it, at least not on day one. They showed no Mass Effect gameplay. Mass Effect 4, or like the new Mass Effect, whatever it will be. It looked great, it's kind of a cineastic trailer. I don't know, maybe it even was in engine. But I would have hoped that they're at a point now where they not just show like some mood images, but actually real gameplay. It's a bit disappointing there. Need for Speed looked very hard to control for me. The graphics were great, like it looked really sleek and perfect, and only thing that kind of stood out to me that it's always night. Any footage that they showed was always nighttime, and that worries me a little bit. I guess I don't like it if the whole race always only takes place at nighttime. It looked great, but how the camera was behind the car and how he was like sliding around other cars, it looked very, very difficult to control. Obviously, I'm just making assumptions here. But let's see when the game comes out, what we actually get. And I have to say, like all the elements, like what they showed there, like tuning your cars and the whole thing being quite like Need for Speed Underground, which is still, I guess, my favorite Need for Speed game. They obviously do a lot of fan service and they try to tick the right boxes, but at the same time, it's nothing that I'm particularly excited about. And then I want to mention Unravel. That's the game with the little red yawn. Because to be honest, in the EA conference, that was the only thing that they showed that was actually completely unexpected and new, at least in my mind. There were a few like unexpected iOS and Android games, but in terms of like proper games, so it's kind of a puzzle platformer where you are a little yawn figure and you run around and it unravels as you go through it. I don't know what exactly it will be, but it looked pretty neat and the graphics look great and it just looked like a beautiful little poetic take on like a platformer game, which I kind of like, so I think it's worth mentioning. Coming over to Microsoft, so obviously two big things that Microsoft announced. To be honest, I'm not a big Halo fan, so I can't really talk about the new Halo. I'm sure a lot of you guys are big fans, but the Xbox One backward compatibility, I guess, was the big hero of their show, and people freaked out completely, and I can understand why they do it, because obviously you can now play all these games that you really love on your Xbox One, and it does give them quite a significant advantage over the PlayStation 4. It's actually, to be honest, like it surprised me how quickly they turned that around, because all it is essentially is an emulator, right? You emulate an Xbox 360 and it runs natively on your Xbox One. And it's quite impressive. If you look what a hard time people have to develop, like let's say, an Xbox 360 emulator for the PC, it's an absolute nightmare. So that they actually managed to turn that around so quickly, it's quite impressive to me. They must have worked really hard. So that is actually great news for all Xbox One users. The Xbox Elite Wireless Controller was announced, right? And it's great. I really appreciate that you can exchange the buttons and you can exchange your little sticks and give it different finishes and customize your controller. But for $149, I mean, seriously, a controller for $150? That is just over the top. I mean, no matter how good your controller is and how nice the finish is, you can buy like, what, 2, if not 3 normal controllers for that price. I really think it's a great idea to kind of give people a bit of a premium option when it comes to controllers, but not for that much money. It is again such a typical console decision where they're like, yeah, it's a good idea, here you get a better controller, but we're gonna charge the shit out of you for that. We know it's not worth that much, but who cares? You're gonna pay it anyway. So it really has this bitter side taste to it. As much as I appreciate that they have it, the price is just such a big disappointment. And then I'm coming over to it was actually it for Microsoft, which is a bit of a shame really, from my point of view at least. Maybe you want to add something, comment section down below. But the PC conference, now that's actually something that I was really looking forward to. I'm a PC gamer and I was kind of proud that PC gaming gets its own conference this year. It was very small, it was very intimate, they had a few technical hiccups, the stage set looked terrible, to be honest. It looked like it was puzzled together from like a few leftover stage pieces that they still had lying around. But I have to say, I kind of liked the format. Like basically all it was, I don't know if you've seen it, but guys sitting on a table in kind of a late night show format, like a Letterman type of thing where he sits on a table and then he has a couch and one after the other developer and people from the gaming industry just come in and they get interviewed. Most of the time there were no scripts, which I think was great, right? People just talk about their games. that concept was broken up by a few guys. Like, for instance, the guy was this Braben, I think, the guy who makes Elite Dangerous. He had to come in and he had to talk down his script, and it really kind of highlighted how stupid it is. Not that Elite Dangerous is bad or anything, it's a great game, but it just showed like just having a conversation on stage is like so much nicer and more natural than sitting there or standing there and reading a script and trying to sell your game like everyone else does it. Basically, EA does it, Sony does it, Microsoft does it. It's the normal format for a press conference apparently. But I like that the PC conference kind of broke that up a bit. But at the same time, it was widely ignored and it had very little impact, the PC conference, because it was very small and they didn't have any, not big significant announcements. Phil Spencer was there, the head of Xbox. I really appreciate that he actually turned up. It was a bit funny, it got a few laughs, just him coming on stage into this really horrible, cheap, trashy stage set. But he took it with humor, and it kind of made him look quite sympathetic, I have to say, like a quite nice guy. So I appreciate that he was there and he talked about Windows 10, but he didn't look like a dog, which is good. And I appreciate he took part in this. The Gears of War Ultimate Edition is coming to PC. That was one of my highlights in the PC conference, because obviously Gears of War is such a console exclusive title. I would have never thought that they bring it to the PC. But they do, and that's quite a cool thing, and I can't wait. It kind of depends, I guess, how much effort they put into the Ultimate Edition, how they're going to improve the graphics, the textures, how good it will actually look. But that they do the effort and bring this title to PC is pretty surprising, and I appreciate that. Dean Hall was there. He gave a little bit more information about his new game that he's working on with his company Rocketworks, I think it is. The game is called Ion, and he kind of revealed that it's going to be like a top-down view. It's not going to be entirely isometric, so you might have a camera that just hovers over your units. Apparently, because it's in space, it's also not entirely 2D, because top-down isometric views tend to be just like one layer. Apparently it does have some kind of 3D feature to it. He didn't reveal a lot. Apparently every player gets his own little area that he can explore and that he can share, but that's pretty much all we know. And I think from what we've seen in this trailer, it just looks like he really wants to create like a quite big user content driven persistent universe in a way. So without really knowing much about it, it looked quite interesting and it looked like something that I would definitely love to try out. Let's hope that it doesn't stay in beta or like early access forever, like a few other games that Dean Hall worked on. A new Hitman was shown, and that was shown at like different conferences. Square Enix showed that as well, obviously, but it looked pretty cool. I mean, the description from the guys who made it, basically they're saying they're taking the open world aspects of Blood Money, which is great, and I love Blood Money, and then the graphical assets of Absolution, and put it together into kind of a new, very sandbox-driven open world approach to Hitman. It will only be called Hitman, which I think is a cool approach, and it nearly gives the franchise like a bit of a reboot, like a feel of a fresh start. They showed this level in Paris where you're at like a fashion show, and it looked absolutely awesome. Like just the flexibility, and you can really imagine how you can dress up and you go behind the scenes and you see all these models making up and getting ready for the show, and then you go out and there's the red carpet, and it tells all these really nice stories around like a fashion show basically, and you are the hitman in the middle who has to kill, I don't know, probably the fashion designer or something like that. It looked really, really cool, and I can't wait for this game. To be honest, I think that is actually one of the highlights of my personal E3. I really enjoyed this game. Coming over to Sony. The absolute highlight from the Sony conference for me was No Man's Sky. I briefly touched on that before already, but the gameplay that this guy showed was just mind-blowing. The size of the universe and the way he kind of seamlessly landed on a planet and walked around. Obviously, all the content on the planet is like generated by an algorithm. No designer actually sat down and designed this particular planet. But just the ambition of it, and it's a team of like 10 people who are trying to make this game happen, it's absolutely mind-blowing. It looks fantastic, and it really kind of elevated it for me from all the trailers that we've seen before that basically just kind of promised a concept to actually something that now feels much more tangible and that feels like something that we actually can achieve. So I can't wait for this game. I can't wait to see more about it. and it is actually coming to PC, which is also great news. Sony also showed some extra gameplay of Battlefront in kind of a canyon environment. I think in Battlefront you can have your multiplayer fights, but then you also have these kind of cooperative missions. You know, it doesn't really have like a continuous story or anything like this, like a story mode, but you can do single missions that you can play alone or with your friends. And I think Sony at their press conference, they showed one of these missions, and that to me looked much cooler also visually than Hoth. It was like in a canyon environment, a bit like you would imagine the Grand Canyon, and you have a jetpack so you can jump on top of little mountains and hills and shoot enemies. It looked pretty cool, but again, I would have, if he would have gotten into an X-Wing and just take off and go into space, fly to a different planet and land there, then my mind would have been blown. Like, that would have been amazing. But if it's just like a quite pretty Battlefield-esque fight on a planet in a Star Wars costume, again, I'm not entirely fascinated by that, not bought into that too much. If you remember, on my channel, I made a video just before E3 which talked about why it is really important that Sony shows some exclusive Project Morpheus titles. Now, they did that. They showed a game that is called RIGS, R-I-G-S. Basically what it is, it's a mech first-person shooter. So you're inside a mech, all your friends are as well, everyone wears Morpheus, and then you can kill each other. It's quite fast-paced, it looked quite cool, but to be honest, I didn't expect a game to work only on Morpheus. I wanted to see the killer app. I wanted to see a game, I don't know, with the impact and scope of Star Wars Battlefront that only runs on Morpheus. You know, if you bring me that, I can see that people would purchase it and that they would play it. But RIGS looked all right, but it doesn't look like a reason for me to buy Project Morpheus, to be honest. It looked fun, but probably not fun enough. So they might need to put a bit more emphasis on that. And then obviously the big thing for a lot of people, I never played the game, so I can't really comment on it too much, but Final Fantasy VII gets a remake, and it was just so funny to see how people in the audience were like falling on their knees, raising their hands to God in full thankfulness, appreciating that Sony is making a remake of Final Fantasy VII. And it was, I didn't really get it, like I said, because I never played the game, but people appreciate it, and it's great. I'm happy that people are getting what they want. And then there was the Square Enix press conference. Now, it was a bit smaller, it was a bit more intimate, but there was a lot of awkward clapping, to be honest. Like, a lot of the stuff that they showed, people were like, yeah, that's nice, yeah. There were quite a few repetitions from other press conferences. Obviously, Hitman. They also announced the Final Fantasy VII remake. And I mean, Sony kind of stole that moment already, and they should have known that and built around it. So maybe, if they would have had the first gameplay, people would be like, oh, that's cool. That would have given them a reason to talk about it, but just show kind of the same trailer footage and announce it again just leaves you a little bit in questioning, if they had not enough content to fill their presentation. You could really feel that they are focusing more on mobile games. That really came through. They announced Tomb Raider Go, which is like an iOS and Android kind of top-down isometric Tomb Raider click-around game. I don't know what exactly. They announced a mobile version of Kingdom Hearts, and there were a few other things that they announced for mobile devices. So you can really see, and I talked about that in the previous video, that they want to shift their focus a little bit more towards mobile gaming. I talked about it in the beginning already, but we got a bit of a better look at Deus Ex Mankind Divided. It looked really cool. I think technically it looks great. The world looks great. Also the story, I think, is pretty nice. The idea that now it's like 20 years after the war, and all these augmented people are kind of living in ghettos, because they are like secluded from real human, for lack of a better word. So it's a quite nice story there, and combined with that visual finesse that the game apparently has, I just really can't wait to experience that story. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. And then there was like this really awkward moment of the director of Nier, like the new Nier game, coming on stage wearing this really weird mask and talking about the game that he's working on. I mean, seriously, what the fuck was going on there? Couldn't believe it. It's like Frank. I don't know if you've seen the movie Frank, where this guy wears like a mask all the time. I mean, in the movie, it's fun to watch, but I mean, what's up with this guy, right? Like that was just weird, to be honest. I'll put an image here so you can see what I'm talking about. And he was literally doing the whole show, like his whole segment where he's talking about the game, looking like this. What the fuck, man? I really don't know what was going on there. Generally, the hype of this year's E3 kind of wore off quite quickly. People were just like consuming these press conferences. They were live and you could really feel the buzz, and everyone's like, oh my god, this is announced, Shenmue is happening and that's happening, and new Hitman, whatever. But then it died off quite quickly as well, and I was like, yeah, okay, seen it now, gonna continue with my day-to-day life. In previous years, it felt like the buzz was continuing for a longer period of time. I just personally felt that. Anyway, I think it was a really, really nice E3. We got a lot of stuff that we were hoping for, and it gave me the impression of developers and publishers actually listening to the people for the first time. It's not like, here's a new IP that you never heard about, and actually it's a bit shit and nobody really wants it. No, it's the Final Fantasy VII Remake because people wanted it. It is gameplay of Battlefront because people wanted it. It is a Shenmue 3 because people were asking for it. So I really appreciate that. I think it's a nice trend, and I hope to see that being continued in the upcoming years of E3. So guys, these are my thoughts. This concludes my video. I'm sure there are 1,000 games that I didn't mention, and I really just picked the ones that I kind of enjoyed. So if you feel I missed out on your absolute highlight, like for instance, I didn't talk about the new Tomb Raider, which looked great, but if you feel like I missed out on your highlight, then leave it down in the comment section below. I would really appreciate to hear just your thoughts on it. And once again, let me say thank you for everyone subscribing my channel, for supporting my channel. It's really, really nice to have you guys on board. So if you enjoyed this video, then please leave it a like. That would be appreciated. You can also subscribe to my channel if you have not yet done that. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time. I'm out. Bye.